Hello. Well, boys, talk about getting it fine. We almost missed our own showtime. Welcome to season 3, episode 2 of what we fondly refer to as the Circus of Safety. And as you can tell, it is nothing but chaos. Andy, you look a bit perplexed there, mate. How are you this morning?
I'm good this morning. I was just trying to think, is this really the second show? Did we do one 2 weeks ago? I can't remember.
We did do a show 2 weeks ago. Now, clearly you don't subscribe to our Spotify channel. So, Andy, do you even know what Spotify is?
Broadly speaking, yeah, it's like a shop where you buy podcasts.
Oh my God,
we haven't got one in Pukekohe, so I don't know. Don't really know much about it.
mate. It's not. This is not a real groovy. I think we're going to have to. Oh my God, we're going to have to meet up and do some educational work with you, I think. But anyway, how you going? What are you up to?
Good, yep, good. Incredibly busy.
What, working 1 day a week?
As you'd well, I worked yesterday, which is a public holiday, which is unheard of.
Well, this is going to be an interesting conversation. Did you pay yourself time and a half and a day in lieu?
Absolutely. I would not be one to be accused of breaking the law.
Although, to be fair, any day you work is probably time and a half and a day in lieu for you, right?
Nice.
The life of a consultant, right? The life of a consultant.
Living the dream.
Moving on to somebody who's a slave to the wage. Des, mate, how are you, brother? What are you up to?
Doing pretty good, but really enjoying this Auckland summer. I feel like it's the first time in years that we've had some decent weather. It's been beautiful.
Mate, I tell you, enjoying it. I'm not so sure. It's when we're a creature that always complains, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but the humidity has been phenomenal here.
Yeah, definitely. But it's nice to get some warm weather and some time outdoors.
Nice. I got some time outdoors yesterday, mowing the lawns. Talking about that, yeah, the grass hasn't grown very much. It's been a very dry summer here so far in Tamaki Makaurau. So it's but it is good. The warmth is good.
Do you have a berm in front of your property?
Do I have a so this? Interesting. You bring this up. I got one in front of my driveway, not necessarily technically in front of my property. I live down a driveway with 4 or 3 other properties, so 4 in total. The berm is up the driveway. So I know where you're going with this. Do I mow the berm? Is that what you're going to ask?
Well, pretty much, yeah.
Also, considering the fact that I suffer from probably what I would consider mild OCD, yes, I do mow the berm. In fact, not only do I mow the berm, I then get the edge trimmer out and I trim and I box in the berm. And then I feel that I owe the members of the community within which I live and the many visitors to said neck of the woods, I then go and sweep the footpath to get all the grass off it.
That's figures. Do you own the berm?
It's irrelevant for me. It's not about whether I own the berm.
Well, it might be relevant for you, but from an occupational health and safety point of view and legislation point of view, it's very relevant.
Well, I guess you could argue then that I'm trespassing potentially, right?
I don't know, but if it's not owned by you and you're doing some work on it, it's owned by a PCBU. And you have an accident, do they have a duty to record it?
Well, Andy, I wouldn't have an accident because I go out in safety Crocs. I go out in noise cancelling earphone things, and wearing my sunglasses, mate. With a wide brimmed hat. There's no way I'm going to have an accident, mate.
I think you've covered the hierarchy of controls in its entirety there.
And in fact, if anything, I'm a distraction on the road. And that's interesting because one of our topics on the wheel, actually, which may even come up today, is can controls become hazards? And to be fair, I think
Well, if Crocs are at the top of your hierarchy of controls, I would say yes, absolutely they can.
Well, in another fascinating conversation, and maybe I should put this on the wheel actually, are Crocs considered closed-toe shoes? Are they? That's a fascinating conversation to have.
Should they be considered shoes at all?
They should actually. I'm a big fan. I'm currently sporting three pairs of them. I reluctantly had to throw away, and because I live in Tamaki Makaurau, like it's quite warm, not really. I actually had a pair of slipper Crocs at one stage. I love them. It wasn't very hygienic though. But boys, we get distracted, right? Talking about getting distracted, let's hope we don't get distracted on the 26th and 27th of March, as we will be hanging out at the National Health and Safety Leaders Summit. Super excited there at the Dewdrop Event Centre. And for those of you, unlike myself, who had no idea where that was, that's the event centre out in Manukau by the Whitewater Park. So good thing somebody told me, otherwise I'd be turning up somewhere totally different. But that's not far away, boys. That's 26th, 27th of March. It's just over a month away. So make sure you jump on and get your tickets. And you'll be great lineup of speakers forming. Slightly different format to last year. But what is going to stay consistent is us, right? Although we are taking a slightly different approach to how we're gonna MC it this year, right? Have we actually, on that note, have we run that past them? Like, are they kosher with what we're going to do?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, sweet. Andy's all over it. Clearly, on his 1 day a week that he works.
Just run it by me again. What are we going to do?
I can't talk about it on air, mate, because we'll give it away. And then they'll want to
Yeah, we're fine. Whatever it is, we're fine with it.
Okay, nice. Hey, Des, do you want to just cover us off, mate, so that we are legally sound and present before we kick into the spinning wheel of death, mate?
I will, and I've been getting right into academic articles, and because I don't have access to many of them, I've been getting into the abstracts.
Wow.
The
It'd be really
of the
great.
article.
It'd be really great if somebody could help you out with that at some point, right?
Yeah. So I thought, well, the Circus of Safety doesn't have an abstract describing what it's about. So why not do a disclaimer in that form? So here goes. The Circus of Safety podcast explores occupational health and safety with a mix of analysis, satire, and irreverent commentary. While insights are evidence-informed, occasional detours into speculation and sarcasm may occur. This podcast is not a substitute for professional advice, nor should it be cited in high-risk decisions. Listeners are encouraged to engage critically and consult reputable sources. The Circus of Safety assumes no liability for cognitive dissonance, workplace scrutiny, or sudden urges to challenge bureaucratic inefficiencies.
Normally I'm a big fan of your disclaimers, Des, but I'm this one not so much a fan of, mate, to be fair, because I've got it on good authority, and I'm sure you two were part of this conversation when we had it. We can be considered an academic article.
Well, now we've got
you were in the conversation when it took place. So there was a health and safety academic that concurred with my statement that I would consider us an academic article, and I'm pretty confident. Well, the way I interpreted his response was, "Yes, you are."
That's not how I interpreted the response.
Well, we're one step closer nonetheless, because we now have an abstract.
Woo, thanks, Des. Love your work, as always, mate, as always. Hey, well, got a big show to get through. Got a few things to talk about at the end. So let's get into it. Are you boys, are you ready?
Yep, spin the wheel.
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Wow.
That was so close to being my topic, and it just ticked over to the next one.
Can we not just pretend? Can we not redo it again? Keep going until we get your subject.
Well, we'd be going all day because we've got 19 of them to get through before we get to Des's. Well, there we go. A question we've got, and I guess this is going to be quite interesting, right? Like, this is a question-based topic for the wheel, and the question being, are we over-culturing? Now, I'm just going to put my hand up and say this was not me throwing it up onto the wheel in anger as we had last season, where I threw a number of things up on the wheel in anger. So I'm gonna jump over to Andy. Andy, the question here being, are we over culturing? I mean, your initial thoughts, is this, in fact, I think this might be one of your topics possibly that's
No,
popped up
I
on
don't
the
think it
wheel.
is. I don't think it is. I don't really know what it means.
You don't know what it means. Well, there we go. So what are your, when you see that, are we over culturing? And I guess it's in relation to health and safety. I mean, what are your initial thoughts? What are your comments, concerns? What comes to mind?
Well, clearly, it'd be useful to define what culture is,
Oh God, here we go again.
because you need to know what it is to work out whether you're overing it, so to speak, which is terrible use of the English language. Culture. I mean, if culture is just the existence of something, can it over exist? Are we talking about overpopulation? I don't know. I'm getting myself all tangled up here.
All tangled up, eh? Well, Des, what are your thoughts, mate? What are your thoughts? Are we, when you see that, obviously, so close to your topic, yet so far? I know you're probably going through some kind of emotional turmoil at the moment, but when you see the topic, are we overculturing? What comes to mind for you?
Well, there's actually another podcast. Another well-known safety podcast just had this as a topic, or something similar.
Can you just send a link?
Probably should. And it was quite a good one. And they talked about the existence of this idea of safety culture being like a trend that the safety profession had for a long time. Should we stop talking about it? Because no one seems to be able to settle on a definition. So no one really, but whenever there's any discourse about it, invariably people are talking about different things.
Yep.
And it's really quite an elusive concept to try and implement in an organization. You can say a lot of high-ended maxims about, the way things should be done, but actually practically applying that is a completely different story. And so maybe this idea about have we overcultured, or what was the topic again? Can you overculture safety?
The topic is, are we overculturing in safety?
Okay, so that might be pointing to this idea that this idea of safety culture being overcooked and something that we need to leave in the past.
Fantastic. Des, you're going to carry the show, mate. Great work. Great to see you finally step up and say more than one sentence. Talking about that, though, we've got Keith jumping in. Thank you, Keith. I don't know where we'd be without you today. It's a poor question about a topic that few can describe or recognise. If anyone can tell me what IMHO is, that'll be great.
In my honest opinion.
My honest opinion.
Wow. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of that. That was awkward. I might just go back to driving and you guys can clearly talk about this because I don't know what I'm doing. Well, and I guess that raises an interesting conversation. If we go down that road, Des, firstly, disappointed. Well, I don't know whether I'm disappointed, flattered, concerned, feeling cheated on about the fact that you listen to other safety podcasts. But nonetheless, clearly these people know what they're talking about because we don't. I just want to kind of pick on a couple of things that both of you said, right? And one of them is Andy's kind of rattling on about, making sure that we define culture, what is culture. And I guess for me, that could be quite unique to an organization, right? And maybe a really hard question for an organization to ask is what does culture mean in our organization? And I guess it'll be not too dissimilar to trying to understand the organization's vision, mission, strategic plan, whatever they're trying to achieve, right? That could be a really hard conversation to have. and a really difficult one, because you may have to be quite honest, especially if you're trying to determine what culture do we want, or what do we believe we are, and then trying to understand where we're at. The other thing too, Des, I just want to put it to you, I guess, coming back. Do you think possibly that one of the reasons for your comments, but you picked up off that other podcast? I mean, feel free to name them if you want, Des, because I'm okay with that if Andy is. Do you think that the problem is more so that we try to silo culture in an organisation? So we often talk about safety culture, we talk about leadership culture, we talk about the culture. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think half the problem is that we're too busy trying to silo it all? I guess is my question to you.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd quite describe it as siloing, but people throw these terms around, and I don't think anyone could really pin a definition on any of them. And so it just becomes this thing that you talk about, but no one really can settle on any definition or outcome or action, or it's just becomes more elusive the more you look into it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, Andy? I mean, I know maybe my term isn't quite correct in terms of siloing, but I mean, what are your thoughts about the fact that often people will refer to safety culture, leadership culture, quality culture, work culture? I mean, what are your thoughts on how people sort of break up this elusive word that we struggle to put a finger on, right?
I'd classify it along with the word safety, in that it's a term that's purely defined, just bandied about, and it often is beneficial. I've been thinking a lot about this, like an awful lot about this.
On your 6 days a week that you don't work.
No, I'm at my morning walks that I've taken up, which I was assured were good for my mental well-being, but I'm not sure they are, because I get into some pretty deep thinking when I'm walking along. I don't know. My perception is that culture is something that describes a circumstance or a situation or an environment or something like that. The culture is the result of other things. It's an outcome. My general approach to the word safety is that that's also an outcome. So you're putting two outcomes together to describe something. But there's no clear definitions of either that I think work particularly well. So what that allows a lot of discussion, hot air, whinging to happen, which effectively wastes time. It's poorly investment. When I think there's much better things we could be doing in the safety space, so to speak, that would have much more tangible outcomes than talking about safety culture. That being said, there's quite good research done around safety culture and specific models that link to it that, like many models, are quite useful. So I think there's two different aspects. There's one is just the general discussion around safety culture like we're having now. What is it? And if you're being really specific and you're talking about Patrick Hudson's work around safety culture continuums or some of the work that's been done by the HSE, they are useful tools to describe certain things, to explain certain things. But I don't think that's what most people tend to talk about.
So are you suggesting potentially when people refer to safety culture, are we also then jumping into things like the Hudson model, for example, the maturity? Does that capture that, do you think?
I think that's one aspect of it, but I would suspect that most people that talk about safety culture haven't read any of Patrick Hudson's work. It's just used as a word to fill things in.
Yes.
And make people sound as if they know what they're talking about.
So sticking with you, and I'm going to jump back to Keith, because Keith seems to be kind of quite knowledgeable on this topic, and I'm just going to kind of take that as it may be, because we're now friends on LinkedIn. Thank you, Keith. Anyway, culture can be usually expressed as around here, this is how we really do things in relation to a subject or an activity. And I guess, so what I want to, and the reason I brought this up, Andrew, because I want to stick with you, and we'll jump back down to Des in a minute. You keep bantering around about this need for it to define things, right? So define safety, define risk, and if anyone's watched more than one show. You say it every time, right? Whenever we bring a topic up, that's your fallback. It's poorly defined, or we need to define it, or how do we define it? And in some respects, I admire you for your tenacity. But my question to you is do we need a global definition, right? As in when we all talk about culture, we're all talking about the same thing, or do you think it's better actually for organizations to consider their own unique take on it and clearly define their take on what culture means in their organization? Just like, what does safety mean in that particular organization? Because it could mean different things to different people, right? So what are your thoughts on that, rather than a global definition, a organizational centric specific definition?
I think ideally there'd be a global agreement, because I think that's helpful. But shy of that, you could bring it down from a global right to an individual point of view. I think if you're entering into a conversation with somebody else like we do, it's really useful to define your terms up front. Even if me and you were having a conversation, Brenton, we could probably talk for hours about things, but to streamline that conversation, we should really narrow down what the actual purpose of the conversation is to start off with.
Holy hecker. So you're telling me I could get back hours on my week if we clearly define what we're talking about every time you ring me to rant?
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
And it's a key principle. Otherwise, you end up having these, and most arguments. And again, this is stuff I've been thinking about and reading about. Most arguments between people are either a disagreement on the principle, but often it's more likely to be a misunderstanding. And people actually deeply agree with each other, but their interpretation of what they're agreeing and discussing about is different.
Yep. No, good point. Hey, just a quick question, just for your personal safety. Are you reading while out for these walks in the morning that you've taken up?
Well, I might do.
Oh, is that something you do at the end of the day as part of your closing down routine?
Oh, I haven't got a closing down. Do I need a closing down routine?
Yeah, I think the walk in the morning, and the reading at night. I think so. Then,
okay.
and I'm gonna challenge you on this. What I want you to do the next time you go. How long are your walks?
About an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, okay, this could be a bit. I want you to talk verbally through what you're thinking, right? And I want you to record that for me. Okay, so I want you to go for a walk. I want you to have an hour, 15-minute conversation with yourself, and I want you to record said walk. And I'm going to challenge Des to do this, and I might even give it a go a couple of times as well. And it'll be fascinating to then put that through some of the AI tools that I use, and to see some of the stuff that comes out, right? It'll be fascinating to transcribe that and play that back. It could be a whole other spin-off show, right?
I thought that was the premise for this show. Maybe I had that wrong.
Well, so what you're saying is we should all do this while walking. we might get some more insightful, some insightful conversations coming out. But there's over to you, mate. I mean, you've heard Andy kind of going on about this. What are your thoughts to my comments around? Do you think we need a global definition for culture? We'll just stick with the topic here, culture. Or do you think it's actually more poignant that organizations take the time, the energy, and the effort, because it's not easy to actually sit down and define for them what does culture mean, or in Keith's words, what is it? How do we do things around here, right? What are your thoughts on that, global or specific?
There's definite benefits for a global definition. I just don't think it's going to happen with something that's so elusive. But let's assume that it does exist. It is a thing. And you can point to...
Hang on, sorry, just for clarity's sake, because apparently Andy suggested this may reduce the potential conflict that we may have shortly. Are you talking about this thing about does culture exist, or does the definition exist?
Let's assume that culture exists.
Okay, cool, thank you. Just for clarity's sake, carry on as you were.
And maybe you can point to something like NASA at the time that they were putting, the Apollo program at NASA, and say that was a good culture. And you might go as far to say it's a good safety culture because people were concerning themselves with the success of the project from the top level to the lowest level. And then you might compare that to the Chernobyl nuclear plant, and in the 80s and say, okay, well, maybe that was a bad culture in terms of compliance and safety. And the result of that was quite a bad nuclear disaster. But as soon as you scratch the surface of saying that one is a good safety culture and the other one's a bad safety culture, there's a whole host of other factors that come up: individual behaviors, leadership, systems, resources. So you're just back having the same conversation that we'd have even if the term culture didn't exist at all. Is that making sense? There's really no value in having that term or using it or in trying to apply it to an organization.
Yeah, cool. So definitely something to think about there. I'm just going to need to ponder that. I might need to go for a walk, but I'm going to come back to another topic about is there such a thing as binge exercising? Because I think I'm currently experiencing that at the moment. But just on that point, though, Des, I just want to pick up on your comparisons there between NASA and Chernobyl, right? Okay, let's just for a minute entertain me here. Culture exists, right? I'm going to put something out there. What are your thoughts around? Do you think, though, culture, and is this why we're possibly over-culturing, if there is such a thing? Do you think culture is in the eye of the beholder? Now, when I say that, I mean, so we talked about, in your examples, you suggested that potentially one could argue that in Chernobyl there was a bad culture, right? Do you think they believed that, though, at the time? Or is it in hindsight that, those of us are scrutinizing the incident following it? The same could be said with NASA, right? So we all see the success of what they achieved. Does that, if you were there, how would you define the culture? So do you think culture is something that is in the eye of the beholder?
You might be absolutely right. Yeah, probably. I don't think it's something that you could measure with a survey or with any sort of thing. You'd have to go in and observe it happening, some sort of ethnographic observation, and yeah, you would have to be there. And you're right. We're saying it's a good safety, potentially a good culture, with the benefit of hindsight, but we don't actually know because we weren't there.
No, and again, and this, oh God, from the highs of me being right to the lows of me having to acknowledge something, and this again might be where Andy's on point around defining it, right? And whether that's a global definition of culture and what good looks like, or whether that is a uniquely organisational definition of culture. Is so important. I mean, Andy, and I'm quite excited here. I'm just going to name and shame someone in the hope that he responds to my LinkedIn requests for a bonus episode next week. I think I'm really keen next week to get a friend of mine. Well, I thought he was until he ignored my last friend request. Dr. Daniel Snyder, who I met through my time on the INSPO internship, and he does a lot of work over in the States and globally around culture and culture surveys and stuff, and be really keen to get him on the show and have a chat maybe next week. So Daniel, if you're listening from the Ozarks, check your inbox please, because there's a request coming through to catch up next week. But Andy, your thoughts. Culture, is it something that potentially is in the eye of the beholder? So what you perceive to be good, I may, because I'm in the thick of it, perceive it to be bad, as per Des's examples.
I don't think culture necessarily is in the eye of the beholder. I think putting a value on it, whether it's good or bad, is absolutely, because you're making a judgment call, and your perspective will be very, very different. And I have this conversation frequently with different people within an organisation where they'll say, "Oh, the culture's good" or "the culture's bad," and they're both working in the same place. It's not, the culture is just the culture. The putting a value on it that's the subjective piece, and that's why models like Hudson's models are quite useful if used in the context that they were intended. I just wonder if, in many cases, we're not better off focusing on other things rather than focusing on something that's so abstract.
Oh wow! Okay, so I'm gonna kind of come straight back at you with something else. Is it something that we shouldn't necessarily focus on, but through the actions and focuses on the things that you believe we should be focusing on, does that not in itself create culture? So is culture something that you want to focus on, or if you focused on the right things, it would develop the culture?
Again, absolutely, yes. So the culture exists no matter what. It's a bit like risk appetite. Yeah, it just exists. If that's how you define it, it's the symbols, it's the collective values of the group, etc. It just develops and exists. Whether it develops and exists in a way that an individual wants it to be is a completely different piece of work. And when we talk about safety culture, what are we talking about? Is it just, does it exist by itself? Or is there a relationship between safety culture and production culture? Is there, do different cultures exist? And is culture the right word for that? Would it be better off to look at priorities? So, in terms of is safety a priority, or is production a priority? Is that an indication of safety culture?
Wow, some great questions. I mean, Matthew Sagrove here has thrown out a comment. Isn't culture the symbols, systems, and behaviour of a group? And I guess you probably touched on it there, Matthew, and I guess we're saying that it probably is. I guess the debate where we seem to be going down the road of is it this thing that we want to be actually worried about? And are we over culturing because we're actually focusing on something that you can't focus on, right? And we're spinning wheels because we're so busy worried about the culture of an organization. But really the culture is, as Andy said earlier on, is a byproduct, right? It's an end result. So if we focus on the stuff that matters, that'll drive culture. So let's stop worrying about it maybe, and focus on the stuff that matters. So Andy, sticking with
Could we not apply exactly the same philosophy to the word safety then?
Oh, very, very much so. And I guess that where I touched on what you were talking about a little bit earlier, and where I was kind of went off and started asking questions about siloing of cultures. So again, is there a better approach not to take a IMS style approach to culture, right? So rather than worrying about workplace culture, safety culture, leadership culture, we just, as Andy said, focus on the inputs, and the output is just culture, full stop. I mean, what are your thoughts to that, Des? An IMS style approach to culture as opposed to worrying about all the individual aspects of it.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense to me. If the outcome's just so elusive, you're naturally going to have to dig a bit deeper and dig into these other areas that you mentioned: leadership, production, resourcing. So that's the only real sort of value you can get out of this, I think.
And
I don't know how better to state that.
Your thoughts, Des, on culture being an outcome rather than something that should be focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. And even as an outcome, is it really that important to identify it as a singular outcome that needs to be worked towards? I don't know.
I guess the question would be and this is where it'd be really interesting to get Daniel Snyder on the call and have a chat with him, because I know he's done a lot of work around, and I hope I'm not misquoting his work, and he'll probably pull me up if I have. But people so if we're, I guess, is the culture something we want to work towards, or is it just something we want to measure? And I guess, are those two things separate? I don't know. Would you measure it if you're not trying to achieve something? I don't know. Yeah, so many questions, right? And like you said, I guess the challenge that we've got, and this is possibly why maybe we've come up with this concept of, are we over-culturing? Because it is so elusive. We're spinning wheels, right? We keep bantering this term around, and it's not actually something you can grasp or catch. It's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right?
Yeah, but companies have spent millions and millions of dollars on this. There's people out there that specialize in it. It's been persistent for about 30 years, possibly longer.
Yep.
Is there something there that we're missing?
Well, I don't know. And I guess that's the question that's going to be answered. I can see here, I can't keep up with Keith and Matthew kind of going off in the comments here. So highly recommend, if you're listening to this or watching this on Spotify or any of the other podcatchers that we broadcast to, highly suggest you jump over to the LinkedIn channel and jump in onto this conversation. It'd be great to get other people's thoughts and opinions on this concept of culture and what exactly is it? Is it something we should be aiming for? Is it a byproduct of good inputs? Should we be measuring it? And hopefully we can get onto this in our bonus episode, potentially with somebody that has kind of maybe got a bit more, focus in this area. But I guess as we wrap up, guys, there's a bit to get through at the end of the show, so kind of need to start wrapping up now. And I think it's been, to be fair, when the topic landed, I was a little bit nervous that we weren't going to be able to get through it. But it's, as we can see, I mean, I've got a list of other things that have come off on my show notes here, and I'm looking forward to pouring through it and seeing if there's some spin-off, some additional topics for the board. But there's wrapping up this concept of, are we overculturing? I guess your final thoughts. Are we overculturing? Yes or no? And maybe your thoughts on why.
Potentially yes. The conversations about it are kind of so elusive and meaningless that it's almost no point trying to concentrate on that. Just concentrate on the things that matter.
Yeah, cool. Okay, Andy, your thoughts?
It's too much of an abstract concept. Like Matthew says, I totally agree with Matthew. Focus on things that are tangible.
Yeah, cool. And I think this is going to be a trifecta. I think we're all on the same page here. My wonder though, my wonder is it still though something we should measure? And that'll be an interesting conversation to have on another day. I agree. I think we need to focus on. I don't know if I'd use the terms more important, but I'd definitely focus on stuff that's tangible. Stuff that you can physically and mentally and emotionally see outcomes for. I think culture will shift with that one way or the other. And I'm leaning on the side of, I think it's a good thing to measure. Why, I still don't quite know. I need to kind of digest that a little bit.
Would it be a lagging indicator though?
I don't know. And I think I need to ponder. I might take up this walking thing, Andy. And maybe it's something we need to ponder. I've been getting and doing a lot of reading recently around governance, and again, that's something I need to ponder, really, because there's governance culture, right? There's all sorts, interesting. Anyway, I digress as I go off into the land of Lala. Well, there we go, boys. Are we overculturing? I think we've got a resounding yes, we are. And I think it's a summary. It's because it's so abstract, we can't actually grab it. Focus on stuff that's tangible and that you can actually physically see. And then, I guess the jury might still be out on whether we should measure it. Matthew Sadgrove jumping in with some great reading, if maybe, like I said, at the end of the day, Andy, as opposed to
that is a good article, actually, that Cox and Finn one.
There we go. So there we go. Andy endorses it as well. So Cox and Finn, safety culture, philosopher's stone, or man of straw. Well, there we go, team. That's season 3, episode 2, done, dusted, and finished. Now, I got to be fair. I've been under a rock recently over the last month as I've kind of got to come to grips with my new role. You boys made me aware of something which I thought I picked up on LinkedIn, but kind of missed it. But clearly, a significant time in safety history. One of you want to share and acknowledge the recent events in the safety world?
Go for it, Andy.
The sad passing of James Reason.
Yes, very much so. Now we're having a bit of a chat about James off air before we went live, and I mean, Andy, I think you guys you guys summed him up pretty. So he wasn't necessarily the first safety academic. How did you guys define it?
I think he was the first one that sort of transcended from safety into non-safety people, and some of his concepts became way more mainstream. And he sold an awful lot of books.
He sure did.
And you know, the Swiss cheese model that he developed and played around with over many years is certainly known by many more people than just safety people.
It sure was.
He's done some. One of the things that I really liked about him was and I've read many of his books, not all of them, but probably have read all of them. It's just the language that he used was just fabulous. So in his 1990 book Human Error, he just says, rather than being the main instigators of an accident, operators tend to be inheritors of system defects. Their part is adding a final garnish to a lethal brew that has been long in the cooking. And I just love that quote. It's just
and
all
it's
the
quite.
operators just sprinkle it.
And I think, like, I don't want to kind of be drawing a long bow here, but I think that links back beautifully to the topic that we've just been talking about, right? And it sits in that space too. And I think, I don't know, this is going to be incredibly awkward if you guys don't agree with me. I think, in honour of James and his recent passing, how about we dedicate season 3, episode 2 to James Reason. So here's to you, James. Big ups. And thank you for all your contributions to not only the world of safety and the professionals in it, but those who are impacted by the work you've done over the many years and your time to safety. So here's to you, season 3, episode 2, dedicated to James Reason. On that note too, though, it's hard to believe. Did you know that our follower count is still going up? I would have thought by now word would have got out that this is absolute rubbish. It's chaos and not worth the airtime that it seems to be getting. And it's just amazing. So firstly, another shout out to all those followers, listeners, contributors. Without you, this probably wouldn't be half as much fun because we still are astounded by it. But listen, our latest follower, here's looking at you, Robert Allen. So Robert Allen from Gracetown in Western Australia, so possibly a mate of Des's. So Des clearly on the LinkedIn page requesting followers.
So all the Southern Gropers know each other.
So there we go. Robert Allen, helping businesses manage safety. He is currently a director and advisor at Lobos Advisory. Lobos Advisory is a safety, environment, and quality consultancy based in Bunbury, Western Australia.
Bunbury, good diving. Good diving.
There we go. Good diving in Western Australia, Bunbury. So Robert Allen, here's to you, mate. And thanks to Des's friends, family, and acquaintances for liking our page. Muchly appreciated. Hey, so just again, a quick reminder, National Health and Safety Leaders Summit coming up in just over a month now at the Dewdrop Event Centre in Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau, 26 to 27 of March this year. It's going to be a cracker. I'll tell you what, the lineup is looking really good. Andy, you've had a look at it, and you're quite excited about it. Some of the panel discussions that are coming up too.
Yeah, a couple of really good panel discussions. One in particular about what a 2030 safety professional looks like.
Wow! Talk about the Jetsons. Super excited. And also, listen, this is going to be a big year for us here at the Circus of Safety. We'll be joining in. I'm actually quite excited. I'm right now at work, getting right into the space. We've got a lot of work happening in this space. The New Zealand Occupational Hygiene Society, their work-related health conference in 2025. That's in May. We're going to be there, so 26th, 28th of May. Looking forward to that. That's going to be, it's an area probably, I don't know about you, Des, but it's an area that I haven't really got my head around a lot. So quite excited to see the speakers there, some international speakers coming in too, and really getting to grips with occupational hygiene and how it impacts the health of people we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably an aspect that's, because it's not so visible, a lot of people gloss over it, but it's no less important for sure.
And incredibly specialist too, right? They hope that we get to see some cool toys, and I might pass out when they start talking about numbers and workplace exposure standards, but I'm sure you'll keep me abreast as to what's going on then. The bit that I'm most excited about, it's going to be at the Hilton. So not sure if we get to stay there, but here's hoping, right? Here's hoping.
Fingers crossed.
Right? Okay, well, that's us, team. Absolutely stunning show. Love your work. What are you up to over the next couple of weeks, Deez?
Oh, let's see. I've got a bit of a side project that is coming to its final stages, and I'm hoping to make a little bit of an announcement about that, hopefully at the next show.
Wow, so there we go. You heard it here first. Big announcement coming from Desai Link next show. No pressure there, Des. I've just made it public.
Cool. Thanks.
Love it. Listen, and I am aware of the announcement. You have shown us some aspects of it today. Super exciting, high quality, as only would be expected from Mr. Desai Link. Andy, next couple of weeks, you got a couple of days work lined up or back on holiday, recovering, or what?
14 days work.
14 days work. Cry me another one, mate.
No, seriously.
14 days work? I don't think so, son.
It's just insane at the moment.
That's good. I guess people are taking safety seriously. Potentially a byproduct of maybe some culture things going on somewhere. Maybe, possibly.
There's an interesting...
Drawing a long bow on that one.
The influence of safety legislation on a nation's safety culture.
Measure that one.
Wow, we do actually have a topic very close to that on the wheel, and I hope it land. How ironic if it landed on it next week, right? Or not next week, in a fortnight. That'll be great. I'm excited. I've actually got a couple of big weeks coming up. A couple of trips out of town. I'm excited to pop down to Eltham to see how we manufacture cheese. That's going to be exciting. And then down.
So you're continuing the culture discussion on that. Lovely.
Heading off to Christchurch twice, actually. I'm going to be going to Electric Avenue, people. I'm going to be getting my dance on. Whoop, whoop. Super excited about that. Sprinkled in a bit of BMX and hopefully a bit of time on the Circus of Safety initiatives that we've got bubbling away in the background. So, listen, we've gone over time. No doubt people have got to go to work. Holy mackerel! I've got to bring this one up. Thank you for the great comments here. Sesamakula, sorry, hopefully I got that right, or Patrick. Very insightful session. I'm glad you feel that way, and thank you for joining us today. With that in mind, though, it's been nothing but a pleasure, gentlemen, and look forward to seeing you in a fortnight.
Thanks, gents. See you then.